Okay, we are live on YouTube. Hello, everybody. And we will get started in just a moment. Let a few more folks come in. I think of this as one of the more complex topics today.
Michael, make sure you start the recording.
Yes, I will. I am just still getting things ready to go. So, okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of Apple app development. I almost said SwiftUI Basics, which was last year's class. It's good to be back with all of you and everybody on YouTube who's watching. Thanks for being here. It's going to be an interesting class, I think, today. So let's get started. Today we're covering what are called optionals, and they are not very optional at times. So optionals in Swift are a concept that is used to determine if a variable is empty or not. And we'll get into all of that in just a minute, but I just wanted to give that introduction. I wanted to see if people have any questions from previous content that we've gone over in class. So we have Becky back with us. Hey, Becky. Becky's our host again today, so we're glad to have her.
Hi, Michael.
So if anybody has any questions, raise your hands and we will take those.
All right, we do have one hand, and that is Margaret.
Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I have a couple questions. Number one is, can you write the actual homework assignment request out?
Yes, my apologies.
Thank you.
I will put
'Cause
that on the platform.
I don't want to put something in and then miss it because I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I will put that on the platform. My apologies.
Thank you. My second question is, when you're writing a function and you have a return, my guess is you have to use that return quickly. I'll say quickly, because the second time that function gets called, that return would get overwritten. Is that right?
So when you use a return statement in a function, so say you assign a variable like say you have var name equals get name parentheses and get name returns Margaret as the return statement.
Sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
And you have var name equals get name parentheses, which returns Margaret as name, right?
Exactly.
But then say you name would still always be Margaret, right? So even if you called it again, you'd have to assign that, you would have to call get name again to get another random name to replace it. So as long as you're returning, think of it as step by step, right? So as long as you follow the steps and you assign your return to a variable, then you won't lose that value.
Okay, but the corollary next part to this is when say people are working on a large project and you have various functions,
Hmm.
what's to make sure somebody else doesn't grab your function that you're using and maybe they're using it at the same time? What's to make sure that they don't grab your
Ah,
function and use it, and it's like your return is already gone before the time you got to try it to
great
use.
question. So every time that function is called, it's creating a new instance of the function. So even though you're running that function 10 different times in the code, it's 10 different instances of that function. So if I'm running, let's say I have get color and I give it a number, right? And I'm returning a color based on a number, right?
Yeah, the color code, whatever.
Right.
Yep.
And that is ran 5 different times. It doesn't matter if they're running at the same time or not, as long as I assign it to a variable. It doesn't matter if they're running at the same time or not, because it's running 10 different versions of the same function.
Oh, it'll know that you called it and match it up with what you're returning.
What you're looking for, yes.
All right, because I was trying to figure that one out, how you do that. All right, thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, your code will basically, so it's kind of like when you're doing a recipe and you're cooking, you're going through the steps, and then you're like, oh, I need to go stir this, and so you run the stir function. You go run it, and you look down at what you're stirring, and it looks good, and then you start adding more ingredients, and then you're like, oh, well, it's starting to make weird noises. I need to stir it again, right?
Right.
All of those are different instances of the same thing that you're doing stirring, and they give different results.
All right, okay, thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, functions are individual. Um, they're rerunning the same piece of code multiple times. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Margaret's hand is still up. So, Margaret, if you'll put your hand down, since I don't have that power right now.
Oh, I need to make you co-host.
That's okay. Otherwise, I am not seeing any other raised hands, and I don't see anything in the chat.
There we go. And I told it to make you co-host, but it does not show. There we go. I think. Oh, I have
Nope,
to
not
accept the
yet.
dialogue.
There we go.
It's weird. I have to accept the dialogue to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start on the content for today. And I will, because I did not do it earlier. Well, we've got the YouTube. I did not start recording. We just kind of got into it. Oh no, I did start recording. Okay. I thought I was crazy. Let me share my screen and then we'll get into the content. Optionals are an interesting part of Swift. You don't see them in things like Python or other areas. They have a similar concept in Kotlin, but not in a lot of other languages. So, okay. So an optional is basically where we are able to say if a variable can be empty or not. At its core, that's what we're talking about with optionals. Optional represents the possibility of no value in a variable. You can think of an optional as a box that may contain a value or it may be empty. And so let's try it. So if I do var name colon string equals nil. Nil means nothing in Swift. So it's saying that you cannot initialize a string to be empty. So that already fails. Let's take out the colon string. So now we're just saying now it's saying, so Swift is trying to help you out a lot here by saying that to assign to nil requires a type. So let's put, I'm trying to trick the compiler here. So if I put var name colon string and I do print left parentheses name right parentheses, it's going to error. Variable name used before being initialized. Well, that's also saying it's nil. It's empty. It has no content. Okay. So basically it has the same thing. So if I put a question mark at the end of string, then it's saying that it's going to give a warning, but it's going to say that it's okay. It will try to run. The error that it gives is a little bit weird because it's saying expression implicitly coerced from string to any, which is a little confusing. But basically, we're saying string is optional. We're saying that what can be there can or cannot be. So to say something is optional is like we just said, var name colon string is optional. Swift does this to make your code safer. Instead of crashing at runtime, like other languages like Objective-C, Swift forces you to deal with the case where a value is missing. Now, where might values be missing? We have values that can be missing in when we're loading data from the internet, when we're loading data from arrays, like if say you have documents or a list of documents. Maybe you have your playlist and you remove, or you've added more items to your playlist or remove them. Or maybe your playlist got deleted and you have no items. Then you need to make sure that, that there is a way for Swift to say, oh, there's no items. What do I do? Why do we need optionals? And it's because not everything always exists. Sometimes we need a variable to represent data before the data exists in the variable. And then we need a placeholder for that data for whenever it exists. And you don't want to always write placeholder data because then you have to erase it and then put new data in. You can do placeholder data and replace it, but that's also takes time and memory when you're looking at a large program. So that's why we can say something is optional. So some examples of where we may have no data, a text field may be empty, which means there's no string in the text field whenever we press the submit button. That's important. You know, if you're writing, this doesn't apply to Swift UI because we do things a little differently in Swift UI, but when we were writing UIKit apps, which was how you built iOS apps, you did have to check if your text field was empty or not. Like I mentioned, if a network request may fail or no data comes from the network request. If you have an array and there's an index outside the array, that will cause data to be missing. Or if it's out of range, no element found. Maybe a file's deleted or doesn't exist. Those are all reasons to have optionals. Okay? Optionals ensure that you acknowledge and handle the values may be missing case explicitly, meaning it makes sure that you are handling your code correctly. Okay? How do optionals work? You can declare, we talked about var name : string ? So the question mark at the end of a variable type states that it is an optional. So you could say var age : int ? So we're saying that integer could exist or not. So age is either an integer or nil. Now, how is that different? Well, we're saying that age could be, and this is actually interesting because we're saying that age could be an integer or nothing. Nil is kind of in a way, a type. So we could have age equals 42 or age equals nil as a way to assign this if it's a string. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a minute and I'll take questions because I think that this was a lot to kind of talk about. So if you want it explained a different way, then raise your hand and we could talk through it.
All right, at the moment, there are no hands up and there is nothing in the chat. But as soon as I see one, I'll let you know.
Give people a minute. If you have questions or if this is a lot to process and you want it explained differently, feel free. That's why we're here.
At the moment, still nothing.
So I'm going to assume that this is making sense so far. Okay. So let's write some code. So we know that we can do var name : string equals nil. and or we could do name equals double quote Michael. Either of those values is acceptable, right? But we're still getting a compiler warning about, and that actually, this is actually helping me because I always have a hard time with optionals, folks. But in writing these things down and teaching you guys, it helps me to understand. So I just assigned Michael to name, but I'm still getting an expression implicitly coerced from string ? To any. Why? Well, name is still an optional. Let's see. If on that first line, if I change var name : string ? Equals nil, and let's change it to Taylor as what it's equal to, we're still going to get a warning. Why is that? Well, it's because it's an optional. When I do print left parentheses name, print name does not know, or if you remember, we explained that it's a box. We don't know what's in the box. Okay? This really has helped me to understand how this works a lot more. And I hope it does you too. When we do print left parentheses name, right parentheses, we're assuming with the print statement we know what's in the box, but the compiler still doesn't know what's in the box, even though we've said that name is an optional. It could be it's first set to Taylor, then it's set to Michael. And I could press enter after var name : string equals double quote Taylor double quote, make a new line and do name equals nil. And it's still, and then right below that we have name equals double quote Michael. So we've assigned 3 values in a row to name, and then we print out name, right? All 3 of those values do not give you a compile error, because we said that this can be nil. It can be a string or it could be nil. Okay, so we have 2 ways of doing this. We can make it a string or make it nil. Just like I could say var age equal var age : int ? Equals 42. And let's really throw off the compiler and say print left parentheses hello double quote hello backslash parentheses name right parentheses exclamation mark I see you are backslash left parentheses age space after the right parentheses years old double quote right parentheses. And we have another warning. String interpolation for an optional value. Did you mean to make this explicit? So the ways to fix, I could apply a default value or use string describing, which I don't want to do either of those. Okay. So what do we need to do? Well, we have a box. And what we need to do is open the box and tell the compiler what's inside. We call that unwrapping. And it's kind of like you're unwrapping a present. And until it was, believe it or not, it was ChatGPT that told me that analogy. You're unwrapping a present to see what's in the box. And that's what did it for me. That's how I understood why they call it unwrapping. You're unwrapping the box and opening it to see what's inside. And that was just such a interesting way of explaining this. So again, we have we're assigning name 3 times, and then we're assigning age once. We're printing name, and then we're printing hello \name. I see you are \parentheses age years old. But we're getting all kinds of Swift errors because we're, again, not explaining how we're going to unwrap these boxes. There's a few ways to unwrap a variable. Okay. We could check for a default value, or we could force unwrap. So to use the value inside of an optional, you have to do what's called unwrap it. So open the box. There are several ways to do this. The first one is called force unwrapping. And this is a thing that you do not want to do unless absolutely necessary. You only want to use this when you are certain it contains a value. So, for example, there is a type of, well, we haven't talked about this, but there's a type of variable in Swift called a URL. And with a URL, you are you give it a string, which is a URL, and it's an optional. And you can force unwrap that typically if you know what the URL is, because you are putting it in there manually. So let's go ahead and do this with our age. Okay. So I'm going to go back in over here to Xcode, and where we have our print hello, name, I see you are age years old. So in the \, left parentheses, age, right parentheses area, I'm going to put an exclamation mark. Now what that does is it has cleared out one of our warnings, because we know that there is there's an age there, because we have explicitly said age is 42, right? So we force unwrapped, we said, we know, and actually this is the best way to say it. We know what's in the box. We're not concerned with what's in the box, because we just know it's 42, right? We know that that value is absolutely, without any doubt in our minds, that value is 42. But what if I say var age : int ? equals nil? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What should happen is we should get an error. And we do. We get a runtime error. Optional in the playground, line 8. Fatal error. Unexpectedly found nil while unwrapping an optional value. That error means that you force unwrapped think of it like this. Could you imagine how upset you'd be if you went and you knew something was in a Christmas present that you got and you opened the box and there was nothing there? Well, that's what the compiler feels like. You just said, "Oh, you're going to open the box. You're going to open the present, and there's going to be a cool little surprise with a value in there." And there's not. And so it's going to throw a temper tantrum. If you are a Harry Potter fan, think of Dudley Dursley when he gets upset. That's the best way to think of force unwrapping. If you know that present is going to contain something, it's fine to force unwrap. Okay? If you don't know, then that's going to cause your app to crash if nothing is there. See, if I go back up to our line, which for me is on line 7, var age : int (?) nil, and I go and I change that to be 38 because I'm force unwrapping, I get a happy program again. Because age is correct, right? Okay. Do you have any questions when it comes to force unwrapping?
All right, at the moment, there are no hands raised and nothing in the chat.
Any questions? Because I know that this is a strange and alien concept in a way. Fenton.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Couple of questions. What is the exclamation called after a variable within the print?
That is the
Is
force unwrap character.
is called a force unwrap character.
Mm-hmm.
So does that suggest that we have a different type of force? I mean, more than one type of force unwrap character out there, or is exclamation the only thing?
Exclamation is the only thing. We
Okay.
use exclamation mark to say that we know what's here. Just take us at our word that we know that that variable has something in it.
Okay. And this concept of optional and unwrapping, what's the use case for something like this?
It's mainly to make sure that your code is safe, and because if you no types in Swift can just be nil without them having an optional character like the question mark. So you have to use a question mark or signify that something is optional for that item to be nil. So say you have an array. You need to signify that that array can be optional or not. So if you want it to be an empty array, you can do that. You can have let's see if we can do this. So in Xcode, I'm going to go down to the end here, and we'll come back to the code we've written. I'm going to write in a comment optional arrays, and I'm going to do var names. Well, let's put optional. names with a capital N, colon, left bracket, string, right bracket, question mark, equals nil. So I've just said that this array can be an empty array of strings, because I've said that var optional names colon left bracket string right bracket question mark can be is optional. So if I load, let's see, if I do, let's see a good example. Let's go down to the next line. Optional names dot append. Append left parentheses, double quote, Michael. And then I do I spell append wrong. Let's see, it's giving me an error for some reason. No exact matches in call to instance method append. Okay, let's try this again. Optional names dot let's see, append left parentheses and
Must you do an insert before you have the availability to append anything?
I thought so. Yes. Left parentheses, double quote, Michael. That is correct. Let's see if it takes that. Known exact matches in call to instance method insert. Very strange. I'm thinking it's because the array is empty already at the start. So let's have it have a value first. Double quote, we're going to just add Taylor as the first value. And it still doesn't like it. That's strange. So let's do dot append. Yeah, it is not liking that. That is very interesting. And I do not know why. Because we're just telling it to add another value. So
You take away the question mark, would it accept that format?
it should, because and it's a, let's see. If we remove the question mark, yes, it does take away that. So it has to do with it being an optional for some reason. It definitely has to do with it being optional. Oh, but you know what I think it is? Let's see. So, okay, that is the issue. When you write something like that, you need to specify that it is optional. So on that next line, so let's go back and do what we did. We're going to remove the first line that said Taylor, and we're just going to put nil. What you have to do, and this is not confusing at all, as in it is very confusing, and I think this is where a lot of people have trouble. Because we defined that array is an optional array, I had to write in the notation when I reference that array, optional names question mark dot append Michael. Why they require that, I do not know. Because if you're not using a function, an instance method on that array, because append is a instance method, if you're not using that and you just said, like, let's see, let's just remove all of this and say options, optional names equals left bracket, double quote, we're going to use Becky's name. Becky. That is also valid because we're not using any instance method there. But again, if I wanted to use an option, if I wanted to append now the name Michael to this list, I would need to do optionals, if I can spell, optional names, question mark, dot append, left parentheses, double quote, Taylor, double quote, comma, double quote, Michael, double quote, right parentheses. Well, I thought I could do multiple of the same arguments, but you cannot. So we'd have to do multiple appends. Okay. So let's do that again. We're gonna do optional names, question mark, dot append, left parentheses, double quote, Michael. Double quote, right parentheses. Okay, and all of that is valid. So when we are using optionals in something complex like that, we need to know if that variable name is optional when we're using instance methods or we're looking at other properties on an instance item like that. So that is the format of if you're going to append or things like that. So again, I'm going to write for the notes. You can do, let's see, how do I want to comment this and say optional assignment. Does not need question mark. For example, name equals double quote. We're going to change it to Becky here, and then slash using a method on a collection like an array requires a question mark. Example would be what we did, optional names dot optional names dot append, left parentheses, double quote, Jim. We'll pick on Jim since he's not here today. And again, I messed up by not putting a question mark. Let's do that. So that's how that works. Any questions on how that syntax works?
All right, there doesn't seem to be anything in the chat, and no hands seem to be up at the moment.
This concept is one of the hardest things to get down, just because, and a lot of the APIs and things we have in iOS, we don't always know if they're optional or not. And so sometimes it's going out there and learning what APIs are optional and which ones are not. So we've talked about, we kind of got off the topic of force unwrapping. And that is kind of the area where, we're talking about how to figure out what that variable is. There's another way. We can unwrap a variable if we don't know what's in it. And that way is called, let me see here what the proper term is. I have a dialogue up I need to get rid of. We can let me see. We can provide a optional, I'm going to skip out of order a little bit. We can provide an optional value. We call that nil coalescing. And that is a double question mark. So what we can do is we can do one of two things here. We're going to go back up to the top of our code where we have name equals nil and our var name equals colon string equals Taylor, name equals nil, name equals Michael. Then we have print name. We could then, if we know that name is, if we don't want to worry about if name is has a value or not, we can use two question marks. So we have print parentheses name. So we could put a space after the E in name. We could do two question marks. And we could do double quote someone else. And what that does is it says it removes that error that we've seen in our code, and it is satisfied because we've given it a default value. So think of it as you have a box. You've opened the box and nothing was there. But if there's nothing there, then you don't have to get upset because the Christmas present didn't have anything in it, because there's this consolation prize over here, this default value. And so when we look at our code, we're still printing Michael because at that point, we're saying print name or someone else. So let's just say I commented name equals double quote Michael, and the previous line is what is shown, name equals nil. So now, because name is empty, name is absolutely empty, our print becomes someone else. And if you also are following along, you'll notice that it says, "Hello, Nil. I see you are 38 years old." And it's saying nil because it is a empty value. Name is nil. So it's just going to put nil in your print statement because name is nil. There's no value assigned to name. So it just writes nil right in the code. So any questions going back to using default values?
All right. As of the moment, there are no hands raised, and there. Oh, Fenton, you've got a question. Go ahead.
So the double question marks is representing a default value to be someone else.
Yes. So it's a value that says if this is nil, we're going to write someone else because we don't actually know what the value is. And so instead of just putting that we don't know or writing nil or crashing the app, because we have told it, because we've told it a default value to use, then it knows what to do. It has something. Think of an if statement where we have if this do this thing, else do this. It's kind of like an else, right? It's saying if there's no value, put this. So for example, say I'm loading an RSS feed or a data from a network connection and I get back no data. I can use this default value to say no data found. That way I'm not just presenting an error or zero, an error because we had no network data. Okay.
But that makes sense to have a default value.
Mhm.
If just in case it became nil.
Yes. Yep.
Then my follow-up question is, if it has a default value, why would the second print statement say nil when it should say someone else?
Great question. Because if you remember on line 13, we're saying, no, not line 13, sorry. On line 6, print left parentheses name or someone else. We're giving the default value to the print statement if name is empty. Does that make sense?
But the second print statement doesn't say doesn't say someone else because you don't have the two question marks there?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, here's another thing that we could do. I can do, I'm going to make a new line after our commented Michael, and I'm going to write var default name equals name question mark double quote someone else double quote. So what I've done is I've made a new variable with the contents of name or someone else. So now I can remove someone else from print name. And then instead of having name here, what I would do is have print default name, right? And because and that error is gone away, and now that does the same thing. Now on line 9, I could go and remove the word name and put in default name. And again, we have no more warnings because we are checking for every possible variation on name. If name is empty, we're going to print someone else because that's what we did with our default value with that string.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Any questions? Any other questions?
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands, and I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So now let's go on to some other ways to unwrap a variable. Those are the two ways that the two easiest ways to unwrap a variable, an optional variable. The next few ways are a little more complicated, but they offer better security. Remember, this whole thing is about security. Okay, how to be more secure with your variables. So we can do what's called optional binding. And it's a safe and most common way to check. So we're going to use if let. And what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we're creating a login system here. So we're going to write var username :string question mark equals double quote Michael. Okay. Then we're going to say if let user equals username left brace and we're going to print user so we're going to do print left parentheses double quote user colon space backslash left parentheses user double quote right parentheses and then on the next line after our right parenthesis or right bracket or right brace I should say else left brace and then we're going to do print no user available. No user available, period, double quote, right parentheses. Now, what does this do? It prints the username, so it says user colon Michael. So we're saying var username colon string question mark optional is Michael. Okay. And actually, I have never even. I'm learning more about optionals with you guys because this really is helping me learn to be a better Swift programmer. This is a very safe way to do this because we're saying if let. So we're declaring a variable in the if statement. If let user equals username. So we're saying if a user is if username contains data and it's not nil, then print the username. Else, user is not found. Okay? Any questions about how that works?
At
Because
the moment, yes, we do have one. Oh, sorry, Michael. Fenton, yeah.
you go ahead. Go ahead. Do we have a
Michael,
hand?
one question? I just unmuted, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
In the one line you have your var user name colon, you have that as a string.
Correct. With an
You have
as an
that as a
optional.
var,
Mm-hmm.
as an optional. But then you go down to the next line and you want to have an if let.
Right.
Well, the let part means that it can't change.
Correct.
So you had the username variable, which is a variable, and then you go down to the next line and you got a username you just change that you want asking if that variable is equal to a let, which is a constant.
Okay, so what we're actually doing here is we're saying create the variable called user only if username contains data. So if username is nil, then then the user variable is never created, and the if we do not evaluate to true in the if statement. So if username is empty, so for example, if I go over here, and that was going to be the next thing I did, if we say if or var username colon string question mark equals nil, then our if statement is going to evaluate to false, and it's going to say no user available because the username is empty. It is nil. Now, if I go to the next line and say username equals double quote Taylor, double quote, then the username will be Taylor because it is an error apparently. Let's see. Because I have needed a capital N. And so because I now have, and I need to put a space between the equals and the double quote. Because it now evaluates to true because username has data. It will say that the username is so and so. Now, why does this work? Well, user is a different variable separate from username, right? We're making a whole new variable in the if statement. And what is anybody can unmute and tell me if you know the answer to this. What is the difference between user and username? Any ideas?
User name is optional
Right?
and user is not optional.
Yes, exactly. User is not optional, meaning user cannot be nil. It cannot be empty. So user cannot evaluate, it cannot exist. And so the statement that if let fails if user can't be created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, that answers my question now. All right, got it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I still have a question though.
Okay.
Early on, you didn't have Taylor assigned to username, which was optional. I don't think you had that line 26 there before. And the end result was still saying it was Taylor because on line 23, you assigned Taylor to the optional username.
Correct. But right now I have it assigned on 23 on mine. 23 is set to nil, and then 24 I assign it to Taylor. So
Hello,
it's showing.
could we say that username is the logging persona and user is the physical person?
No. Um,
No?
no. No.
Okay.
They're two different variables that represent the same piece of data.
Okay.
And the way that it works is user is a way to check that it's user is a way to check that data exists in username.
Okay. Yes.
So
I have not been following lately because I don't have Apple devices like computer and iPad because my iPad is too old.
mhm, I
But
understand. We can talk
yes,
about this at another
yes.
point, but
Okay.
yeah, it is done this way because the login the username field would be looking it can't be empty because if I want to log in I would need to know if data is if a username exists from the text field, and we don't want to crash our app by force unwrapping, so that's why we have if let. Okay, any other questions related to the if let?
Benton, you do still have your hand up, so if you have any more questions, feel free.
I do. I don't think I have completed my question earlier.
Okay.
Number 24, you
Mhm.
didn't have that line before.
Right.
Could you change back to where it was by commenting number 24?
I'll just remove
And
24.
yep, and then put Taylor back on 23. That's optional.
So it does the same thing. I'm just having, so it will be Taylor on line 23, and it'll say user Taylor.
The
Right.
result is the same, which puzzled me.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of understand. Well, actually, still kind of confused me a little bit here. The result is Taylor at the
Mhm.
end, right? And we
So,
were talking about optional versus not optional with the
right.
user, which I understood that part of it. What confused me a little here is that username is still optional,
Right. So,
meaning it early on, like lines prior to 23, we were talking about unwrapping. There's nothing here that says unwrapping anything. Why would the print statement be allowed to call it Taylor here without unwrapping?
so the reason why we're kind of unwrapping, we're making sure we're doing a check to make sure it's kind of like we're checking the box to make sure something's in it before we unwrap it. But I'm going to explain this a little bit. I'm going to remove Taylor's name from here, and I'm going to set this to nil again. And I'm going to use a comment above this that will say declare username variable before network call. Okay. So we're calling the network to see if we get back a username. Okay. So we're defining username and all of that. So I'm going to make after line, now that's line 24. Let's do network call code here. Result is return of Taylor. Okay, and then I'm going to do var, or not var, username equals double quote Taylor, double quote. So because we start out with nil, when we declare the variable, then we have the network call, and then after the network call, we have Taylor as the username. So if we were to not get a return back from the network call, we would get no username found, no user available. But if the network call works successfully, so I can do network comment network call was successful, and our return value was Taylor, right? Then that's how we're computing that value being Taylor, is because you're getting back data and it's not nil anymore. So because we are saying it was nil and now it's no longer nil, does that make more sense?
It does, but I'm still kind of hung up on the action that I thought was required to do the unwrapping. Using an extra question mark or something like that above. I forgot how you did it, but I thought there was an action required to do the unwrapping part of it, to give it a value of Taylor.
There's multiple ways to unwrap. There's force unwrapping, and then there's the default value that we did to unwrap. This is another method called, well, there was the force unwrapping. That was one method. There is nil.
Yeah, that was the force unwrapping is probably what I got hung up on. I thought it was required to force unwrap.
No. In fact, you want to stay clear of force unwrapping. Because again, if you force unwrap and you don't have a value, you will crash your app. If you do that, like let's say, again, if you did this network call and you didn't get a value back, and instead of, I'm going to make a new line above the if, and above username equals Taylor. If I did print left parentheses username exclamation mark right parentheses, I force unwrapped that before there was a value, right? I force unwrapped when it was still nil.
Right.
And because I force unwrapped while it was nil, I've crashed my app. I've made the user's phone go back to the home screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does with the force unwrap exclamation mark prior to having any value at all. Gotcha. I think I got it.
So because we're using optional binding with this if let, then we're making sure that we have a value before we try to use that value. And that way we are making sure that it is a safe way to make sure we have data before using it. So again, we have 3 ways. Force unwrapping, if you know the value. We can nil coalesce, which is using a default value. And then we have optional binding, which is binding the optional to a non-optional value to see if it will crash the app, or not crash the app, if it will evaluate to true. So those are the three that we've learned so far. And there's one more that we'll teach. The last one we're going to work on is called guardlet. It's also known as early exit. This is great for cleaner code. It forces unwrapping at the top. So it kind of makes sure that when you do a guardlet, you are saying create the variable, and if it doesn't create, then return. So what we can do is we're going to create a function. We will use our skills in creating a function here. So let's see what we can do. We can do this. We're going to create a function called greet. Like, we're going to greet somebody. And what we're going to do is that we're going to write func greet, left parentheses, name, :string, question mark. So you're going to see a question mark in the argument. Okay. So this function has we're not going to use a return statement or anything. And we're going to use a right parentheses. Oops. And I need to use a left brace. And then we're going to do guard let we're going to use greeting name with a capital N equals name. And this does the same thing. We're taking an optional and we're making it, and we're trying to make it into a and we're trying to make it into a non-optional. And then we're going to do so greeting name equals name else left brace print left parentheses double quote, there is no one to greet, period, double quote, right parentheses, and then we're going to use the word return. Then outside of our guard statement, we're going to use print left parentheses double quote, hello, and then backslash left parentheses greeting name, double quote, right parentheses. It is great to meet you today, period, double quote, right parentheses. So, and I did something wrong. Oh, I put a double quote in parentheses. That was smart. All right, let's see. Okay. Well, hello, greeting name. It is great to meet you today. And we got some extra characters that went in there. There we go. So then we can either do, and this is another good function example. So we can call greeting or greet left parentheses name. What happens if we just do greet and leave it empty? We cannot do that. But what if we just do, if we put an underscore before name, nope, it still wants an argument. So we could put, let's see. So we would have to put nil in there for the argument. And it would say, there is no one to greet. But if I change nil to be double quote Michael, double quote right parentheses, so we have greet left parentheses double quote Michael, it would say, hello Michael, it is great to meet you today. We're using the guard let statement to do this. Another example of how we can do this is we can say, that was with a function, but we're going to do this with just a regular guard let, and we're going to say var color colon string equals nil. Guard let fav color equals color else actually, you would need to put this in a function because there's no way to go out of this block. Yeah, so that's why you would need a function for a guard let, because you need an exit point from the code you're running. But you could do this in a loop. You could do this in a switch statement. You could do this in anything, right? But the easiest way to do this outside of a function or whatever, where you don't need a return, would be the if let. So if let and guard let are the two other ways that you can unwrap. So guard let is very useful if you are getting information from an argument of your function, or for other information that you're getting, from, maybe you're doing a network call. You can use guard let to say, hey, if I get the network data, display this on the main thread, else give an error and return. That's a thing you can do. And I'm just writing a comment, use guard let while in a code block. Okay. Any questions on those things?
All right, we have a hand. Fenton.
Yeah, so this is the first time I see the else keyword to be used outside of the keyword if. So this is the structure of the guard keyword, or is it a structure of the let keyword? I'm not
Of the
clear on
guard.
that. The guard has the else as optional, right?
Yes.
All right. And just so I'm clear, the name variable, or maybe that's called the parameter, isn't it?
Parameter or argument. Mm-hmm.
That's not a a variable at all. It's just a
Yeah, it's just an argument.
argument, yeah. Because I noticed the previous line, like say line 18, it has a variable name called name, but that has nothing to do with the function itself having the same word.
Well, that's not actually true because when we have, let's see, when we are using in our Gardlet greeting name equals name, that is our parameter, our argument variable. Parameters and arguments are variables as well. They store data, so they technically are variables because they are function parameters that store data.
It's local to the function.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Any variables declared in a function, whether it be their parameters, arguments, or variables inside the function, are all variables, and they are all local. They are all scoped in Swift to the function. So another thing that I wanted to mention, I mentioned up there about arrays, where we had that very interesting, had to use the question mark dot append. That's called optional chaining. That is why we have to use the the question mark in the middle of our, in the middle of the period notation to understand why that's chaining, because we're chaining optionals in our code. So it has to know that that is an optional. So that is called optional chaining. Okay. So we can also use another thing that we can do. We can make this will really make things interesting, but we can technically, let's go back to optional chaining. When we have optional names, we have as string, when we're saying left bracket string right bracket question mark, those are optional. That array can be optional. It doesn't have to have data. We can also do more option var more optional names colon left bracket string question mark right bracket string equals nil. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Can anybody tell me what that nonsense looks like or what it is?
It could be a different data type.
Nope.
String.
They still have to be strings. All of them have to be strings. Or nil. So in this, I'm saying the array itself can be nil, or I'm saying that the array can be an array of strings mixed with nil values. So here's where it gets interesting. More optional names equals left brace nil comma double quote Michael double quote comma double quote nil, or not quote, oops, nil comma double quote Taylor double quote comma nil comma double quote Becky double quote right bracket. So where might this be useful? Maybe I load an RSS feed that does not give appropriate, like some of the feed entries are invalid and they just won't load. Okay. Those entries may still show up in the array and crash the app. Because if we make them have to be there. But if we say, hey, those options can be nil, and we just load the entries that, you know, we just load the entries that are actual entries, and we just leave the other ones at nil. We could then use code to go in and break out all the nil all the nil options, and we're not crashing our app. This is completely valid. So then I could print this array. I could do print, left parentheses, more optional names. And then I could do question mark to put a default value. And then I could do left brace, double quote, no one found. So again, I would print the array. So if I look down in my debug area, I see left bracket, nil, comma, optional Michael. So there are ways to fix that. Because it's saying that it is an optional. So there are ways around that, but it's basically a way that you can get that data out. But I basically just told it to print that, and then, so say I commented more optional values equals, right? So let's do that. Let me find my line here. Let's see. Let's go one more line, and I'm going to comment that out. And I get no one found. Very simple. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? If you'd like to just unmute.
Benton has his hand up. Sorry.
Maybe I'm not clear on that extra question mark still on line 13.
Okay, line 13, let's see. So more optional values or names. So the extra question mark is saying not only is the array optional, which is what that last question mark does, it means the items in the array can be optional.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, it looks confusing because it's more optional values are names equals left bracket, string, question mark, right bracket, question mark. And so it's like, why is there two question marks? Well, both the values in the array and the array itself can be optionals.
I think I got you. And you were saying something about taking the nil out with some methods before, and I wasn't too clear what you were saying.
So you could
yeah.
probably use some searching and regular expressions to look for every occurrence of nil and just remove those from the array and just have a new array that's been filtered.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So some examples. You could put So some functions return an optional, like the when you're converting between types. So let me show this. This is kind of cool. These are good examples of options. Var new int equals int with a capital I, left parentheses, double quote, 1, 2, 3, double quote, right parentheses. So we just created a new integer, but that is an optional value. Because what if I put well, let's finish the example here, and I will demonstrate. Okay, so if I then print left parentheses new number is backslash left parentheses new number right parentheses double quote right parentheses, I'm going to get an error. Oh, that was new int, not new number. So we have new int as the variable name. And I get back new number is optional 123. So let's make sure we unwrap that however we want. So I can force unwrap. And I get back new number is 123. And it gets rid of the warning and does not print that optional stuff there. Okay. Now, if I go up here and I make that int left parentheses double quote 123 to 123ZYX, then we get an error because that can't be converted into a number. Okay. So instead of force unwrapping, this is why we don't force unwrap, guys. Because when I just force unwrapped, I created an error because 123 XYZ is not a number. It cannot be converted into a number. It is impossible. Okay. So when I have new int exclamation mark, let's get rid of that new int, and I can just do question mark space 0. So now I have print left parentheses double quote new number is backslash left parentheses new int question mark 0 right parentheses double quote right parentheses. So new number is 0 is what shows up. I can also do this. I could do, because this is an optional, I could do if let is number equals new number or new int left bracket or left brace. Then I can say print left parentheses double quote the new number is backslash left parentheses, and what was our variable called? It was is number. And then I can do right parentheses double quote right parentheses, because that is a number. And then I can go down the next line and do else, can't type, left else space left brace, and then I could say print left parentheses, double quote, no number was found. Now, why is this better? Why is this approach better than using a default value? Well, the default value can only be the same data type as what we had. So, no number was found comes up. Above that, it says new number is 0. Because it's 0. We can't get a number. We cannot, you know, like when we use default values, right? We cannot use question mark, double quote, number not found. Oh, it doesn't like that. Cannot convert value of type int to string. So when you're using a default value, it has to be the same data type that you convert in with. So this must be a 0 because it is the same data type as what is expected. So we can either get, let's remove our ZYX. So it would either be 123 or 0, or we would get new number is 123, and then the line below that says the new number is 123. It's two ways to do the same thing, but if you're using the if let or guard let, you have a lot more control over what is being put on the screen compared to using a default value. Does that make sense, folks? Okay. We're going to wrap up. This went longer than I thought it would. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Michael, you do have a hand up. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay, let's
Fenton.
go ahead and take it.
And hello. Line 43, at what point does this line say is optional integer? I didn't catch that part.
So int, remember int, capital INT, is a function. And what it returns is a type that is, so it, int, let me comment that, that's bad. Int with a capital T function returns INT question mark optional value. So because int as a function has a return type of int, it's returning a value that is optional.
Did you make that function call int up above?
Nope.
I forgot.
Nope, that is a built-in Swift function.
I must have forgotten you taught that.
Yep. It's how you
So
can,
int is a function, built-in function that does what?
it converts a string, which in this case is 123, into an integer.
Integer, that's right.
And because 123 is a valid integer as far as what it can take as a number, it successfully converts it to an integer. But if I put ZYX on the end of it, that is no longer a valid function, a valid number. So
That
therefore,
makes sense.
what's that?
That makes sense. But I'm still confused. Why is line 43 considering new int to be an optional variable?
Because what it returns, so new int would technically be, if we gave it a type, remember Swift has type inference? Because we have equals int 123, it's using type inference to infer the type. But I could also do : int question mark. and strongly type it as an int, as an optional. Now, watch what happens when I remove the question mark on the type. Boom. We get an error. And a lot of warnings and a lot of errors. Because the system knows more than we do that what's returned from the int function is an integer optional. And that is why looking at the documentation for some of these things to know what these functions return is very important.
So today is the only day that I know of the optional character question mark. And prior to today's class, I didn't know there was anything that creates an optional variable without the question mark.
We had a few times because we did use int at times, but yes, this is the first time we've really introduced this. And we will do, this whole class is going to talk a lot about optionals. So this is kind of the primer to this topic. We will see a lot more of them as time goes on because a lot of our data will be optionals.
Then I better understand that. Could you remove the int question mark again on line 43?
Sure. Give me just a second. So on line 43, I'm going to remove the question mark at the end of the int. And see, we get all of these errors because we're explicitly saying that this is an int and not an optional. But again, the easiest way that we can not even worry about it is just to remove the type, explicit typing.
Now, this line right here, I don't understand how this becomes optional again.
Because we're letting, well, we know because int is an optional function, right?
Right, that I do understand. It's a function that returns integer, yes.
It returns integer.
What makes it optional?
Because the int function can return a successful integer, or it can return nil. So
that makes it optional?
Yes, because it can return either or. It can return 123 or it can return nil. And if it returns nil, then the variable that it needs to go into has to be able to accept nil as a scenario. And the only variables that can accept nil as a scenario are optionals.
Oh.
So that's how we know that the int function is an optional function, a function that returns an optional, is because it returns that value.
So that makes the new int variable to be optional without putting a question mark there.
I'm going to create a function down here on the last line. I'm going to call it convert to optional, and we're going to use a argument of string or a value of text, which is a string, right, parentheses, and then we're going to, if you remember functions, we're going to add a return type, dash greater than string dash greater than, oh, not dash greater than, left brace. Okay. And then we're going to do return. And then we're going to do return text. So now we've made a function that takes text that will take in a value of text and return text. So now we can do var new optional :string optional equals convert to optional left parentheses nil right parentheses. Well, that doesn't exactly work. We need to have some text. So this is not exactly working the way I thought it would. Oh, missing argument. That's why it didn't work. I need the argument label. Text :nil. Oh, and I did not put a question mark at the end of my function's return. And so I had to add in the argument text :string ? return of string. So now I've taken any kind of value and I've made it into an optional. So I can then do, we have, let's see. So let's make a non-optional outside of our function, var plain variable equals double quote some text. And then we're going to put plain variable in our function call, and that should make a new variable called plain variable. Okay. Now, if I do print, left parentheses, new optional, which is the optional we made into an optional, it says expression implicitly coerced from string to any, just like we were saying before. So because I used a function that I actually came up with like 5 seconds ago, we have converted a string to a string optional. And because of that, I would either have to provide a default value, no text found, and then it would display some text because some text was found in the variable. If I took out some text above on line 54 and made it nil, we would get what happened there? Well, that is we can't have that be nil because that's a regular variable. But we could then say, so that has to say some text. But after we have new optional text or new optional :string ? Equals convert to optional, and then we have text, plain text. If we were to take new optional equals nil, then we've taken new optional, we remove plain text out of it, and we say no text found. So because we can manipulate these optionals like this, we have full control based on the actions and methods, the 4 actions that we learned, which include force unwrapping, optional binding, if let, and guardlet. Those are the 4 ways we unwrap our present and make sure we're safe. I want to go through a few things real quick. Force unwrapping is the biggest mistake a lot of people use. Force unwrapping too often is a problem because it crashes if it's nil. Anytime you force unwrap, you will crash if it ever can be nil. Keep that in mind. Assuming that a text field in UIKit is not optional. A text field in regular UI without Swift UI is always optional. Confusing optional types with default values. So, for example, var name : string ? Equals double quote. That is not the same as nil. Two double quotes is not the same as nil. It just means it's an empty string. We know it's a string, okay? But it is not the same as being nil. Writing optional. So string string ? Accidentally. That does happen. The typos happen. So those are some major ways that people make mistakes. A way to look at at optionals, is there's a scientific and philosophical concept called Schrodinger's box. The way that has been told to me is that there was a scientist that put a cat in the box and left it, or theoretically could have left it for any amount of time. We don't know how long it was left, and depending on when you open the box, would you have a live cat or not? That is called Schrodinger's box. You can look it up. It's very interesting, and it's an interesting way to look at it. It may contain something, it may not. It may contain something substantial, it may not. I like the Christmas present analogy because it's a box. You unwrap the box, right? You open it, you get a gift, or you hope you get a gift. And what do you do if you don't get the gift? That's the way I look at optionals, and that's what we're going to be covering that a lot throughout the class. But I felt it was very important to spend a lot of time on that today. It's right up at the top of the hour, but I want to give people a chance to take any last minute questions.
All right. At the moment, I'm not finding any hands and no chats.
Okay. Give people just a minute and then we'll wrap up. If you have any last minute comments or questions, it's a lot of material. So, yeah. All right, everybody. If that's it, then we'll have material on the platform very soon. I will be posting assignments. I promise. Oh, did somebody have something?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to say I might have questions later because I have to go through the code to really understand everything. I have a feel for what's going on, but I took some screenshots because I missed a few things. So,
Okay, and the code will be on the platform very soon.
got it. Thank you. But that's why I'm not asking anything, is because
No
I
problem.
go through everything and
Sure.
really understand it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We will not have class next week because it will be Thanksgiving and my birthday. So I'm taking that day off, and you guys should too. And so it will be a great day. Enjoy it. look very forward to seeing you guys back. I honestly learned a lot from this myself. So, a friend of mine, a podcaster that I really enjoy, has always said the best way to learn something is to teach it. And she is so right about that, because you find ways of making it work for students, and then you find a way to make it work for yourself. So this has been a topic I've had trouble with myself. So if you have trouble, post questions on the classroom. I'll be traveling this week. I don't know that I'll be able to be in office hours with Taylor. So I will be on the road, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, seeing what you guys think of all of this stuff, and we'll get to writing apps eventually. So thank you all.
Wait, do we
Okay.
have office hours defined at all?
Taylor, I don't know if Taylor, she will. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so sorry, my headphones died. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out when, because like I said, Michael's gonna be leaving on Saturday, so haven't figured out exactly when or if or what format they will be in, but there will be some kind of
Yeah,
office hour format.
It's just helpful if people know so they can plan.
I appreciate that. I just don't know because of Michael traveling.
Yeah,
I
well,
have commitments every night. I have commitments pretty much.
we'll try to pin something down by tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. We will see everybody in 2 weeks, and enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you very soon.